Welcome to Driving and Dragons, driving the conversation. Daniel here. All right, guys, we're going to let some folks start rolling on into the comments here, and we'll be bringing Mr. Venger Satanis on soon. He's should be back in from one of my favorite things in the universe, karate lessons here soon. And we'll get cracking coming in today to talk about the 7 keys to effective TTRPG design. In specific, the third key of keeping settings before systems. As we all know, the 7 keys or the 7 keys to effective TTRPG design are all about kind of the next level things that make your games a step above and help get you to the actual completed state of a viable, sellable game, something that can actually not just sell. I don't like to always put everything in terms of being able to, market the game, but something that when people have it, they can actually play it. Like it has replayability. It has something that makes people actually want to go back to it over and over again. It doesn't just turn into I pulled it off the shelf, we played it, oh, it was kind of cool, it was Bob's game and we like Bob, so we bought his game and he liked it and everything, but we put it back on the shelf and we never touched it again. What is it that makes it a game that stands out and it's not just another clone? Or if it's a quote unquote clone, let's say you got an OSR style game that's really running off of D&D, AD&D for the most part. What do you have that will what do you have that will make it stand out as not just another AD&D but not AD&D, or AD&D with a serial number scrubbed off? What is going to make it stand out as something different? And one of those things is to think first in systems, or think first in settings and then in systems. Because at the beginning of the day, in the beginning of everything you do, you have to be looking at what are you going for with your game. And if you're trying to push a certain, for lack of a better term, vibe, if you're trying to push a different, a different feeling and a different set of core emotions or core reactions from the players, your mechanics are the number one thing that can screw that up. And I heard it once said that the number one way that you can tell a mechanic needs to be fixed or needs to be reworked is if it's a mechanic that stops the game. And not stops the game as in, oh, well, we have to, stop and look this up. That can happen with any game with a certain amount of crunch. But when I say it stops the game, I mean, it's a mechanic that anytime it comes up, it takes you out of the game itself, out of actually feeling the existential horror. If you had a mechanic in Call of Cthulhu that basically shattered all the tension and brought you out of that sense of impending doom and dread and unknown, that would be a mechanic that would be violative of the setting and would be one that needs to be reworked. Well, I've got you here. Like I said, we're going to go just a couple minutes here before we bring Venger on. I know he's here. I just don't know if he's quite ready yet. But we let's go ahead and take care of the housekeeping here. We will have another short tip, the bonus tips, if you will, bonus keys will come out next week. Obviously, members get everything except for intelligence as a dump stat early. That is basically the sole benefit to being a member, other than getting to vote on what I do with the cars once I finally get them, because we're steadily chugging towards that goal. In that vein, I'm almost at 1,000 subs where I can actually finish the monetization of this channel and get even closer to being able to build and restore those cars. And as a giveaway, I'm working out the numbers and I'm getting the STL and OBJ files and stuff for them now. One of my players has a very, very high-end commercial resin printer, and I'm going to print out some 3D models of most likely both the Dodge Dart that I've been talking about for a while and the 280ZX that you guys see me working on in a lot of the videos. I'm going to go ahead and print those out and give away several of those to subscribers to the channel at the time that we hit the 1,000 mark. So basically, when I wake up and see that I've got 1,000 subs, we'll do a celebration, and I will give away several of those minis. There's a fun thing we can put in there. Let me see here. I don't know if StreamYard will let me add a poll to chat, or if I would have to do this otherwise. I may have to actually go pull it up on YouTube to do it and put this poll in. I'll do that real quick. I'm going to put a poll in the chat here shortly. And I think what we'll do is kill my audio there. I'll put this poll up here. Just say here. It should be a yes, no poll. Should the giveaway minis come painted or gray? I think I know where that's going to go, because obviously obviously I know that the people watching this are all gamers, and I know how we feel about minis. Even those of us who have no intentions of ever painting them will jump in and say that we need them unpainted, because we're definitely going to paint them at some point in time. And the ones who do say that do love painting them are going to add them to the pile of unpainted minis, where they will be cherished forever as unpainted minis that they cannot wait to get to. So, obviously, Corvid Codex Volume 1 is up on Lulu, folks. So let's not, don't be shy. Run out there, get the ebook. I think it's $4.99 for the ebook, and it's $14.99 for the paperback. It looks fantastic. Patty did an awesome job on the cover, and Rob did a great job on all the art that's on the interior. Let's see here. Here's the art for my story right there. Absolutely fantastic piece of artwork. So grab yourself one while they're hot. Volume 2 will be coming out here in the somewhat near future, as we're currently working through the editing process on it. And of my other multitude of projects, you want to talk about somebody who needs to read his own 7 keys, probably more than anybody else is me, because the 3612 system game is slowly but surely making its way towards the I don't know, existence, I guess is the best word. It's only kind of half put together, though. We did have about a month or so ago, I did have a guest here on Driving the Conversation who actually took the very sparse framed rules and rolled up a couple of characters and seemed to have no trouble rolling them up. So that's a good sign. I like to put the crunch in the character creation to avoid that problem I was talking about, where the mechanics drag you out. All right, so let's see here. Who have we got in chat right now? I think we got 4 or 5 folks here right now. Got Shellback Bo. Always good to see you, my friend. Been a member here on the channel. Wife distracted you. Yeah, wives can be quite distracting. And actually, just a heads up, guys, I've got to keep an eye on mine anyway on my phone. My wife's getting a couple of things checked out at the hospital. Nothing serious, nothing major. We don't think there's anything there, but I do have to keep an eyeball just in case they, come up with something like, hey, we found something and you need to go. But like I said, it shouldn't be anything of significance. But yeah, wife distractions always happen. Of course, Mikey D in the house, as always. Next level things. Dude, you got to be careful saying it like that. Next level with an exclamation, things, exclamation, all caps and everything. You throw a hashtag in front of that and you just put me in the bro SR. Can't paint for shit. So if I get a mini, I'll need it to come painted. I don't know, dude. You can't be worse than me. Bunser, you cannot be worse than me. So And in Japan, 8 a.m. in Japan, almost time to get the kids to preschool and the house moving action. So y'all are right up there in the morning time. Believe you me, Suzuka is a rough race for me as an F1 fan, because it's like I love that track. I absolutely adore Suzuka. It's one of my favorite racetracks. And the race happens at like 2 in the morning because of the time. It's like, here you go, checkered flag waves at we go green flag at 2:05 a.m. It's like, are you kidding me? Wait up 2 in the morning. It's gonna be 4 a.m. before the race is over. Of course, it's Suzuka, so it's gonna rain, which means it's gonna be 5 a.m. before it's over. But anyway, as soon as Venger gets back, I know he's like I said, he's there, but he's running around getting back from where he went. And as soon as he comes back and gives me the thumbs up, I'll bring him on and we'll get to chatting. Hey, there he is. Hey, look, it's Venger's ceiling.
Yes.
What's up, man? How's it going?
Good.
It's good to have you on board. Good to have you on board. When is VengerCon coming up next? I always
next weekend.
Next weekend got VengerCon, huh?
Yep. Awesome. So it's come up real quick. So the Friday the 17th through Sunday the 19th.
Fantastic. If I ever get to the point where I can make RallyCon a reality, I'll have to make sure that VengerCon ends up being the stop on it, or the final stop on it.
Well, hopefully one day it will come back. For right now, this is going to be the last one that I can count on. You never know what's going to happen. I always hope that, hitting the big time, I used to think was just right around the corner, but now I'm hoping that maybe like 5 years, and I don't really care about it for me or necessarily for like fame or money or whatever. It would just be nice to be able to do things with the quality that I would like to give them. Like, I would like to make a book that looks like a $50,000 Kickstarter book rather than, a $5,000 or $10,000 Kickstarter book. And if I do a convention, I would like there to be, like 100 people there or more. Right now, the attendance numbers just aren't there for me to keep doing it. Because I want to do it at a certain quality. I could like cheap out and just like do it at the public library or like, I don't know, Denny's or something like that. And yeah, that could happen. It could still like function and be profitable, but I want to do it at like a certain level, or else, I'm going to let it die. So for right now, this VengerCon 5, The Will to Power, is going to be the last VengerCon, unless, as I said, something happens and it's clear that there's an appetite for it where there isn't now. That who knows? That might happen in 5 years, but it also could not. So I don't want to promise anything. So, yeah.
Well, who knows? I'm here. Let's hope for a watershed then. End up with a line.
That would be
out
nice.
On day one, there's a line out into the parking lot. It's like, hey, looks like there will be VengerCon 6.
I would have to disbelieve and realize that this is a clear sign that we are in a simulation, and I am plugged into the Matrix, and this cannot be real.
Well, here you go. Shellback Bo's got the right idea for you. You move it to the Waffle House, man.
Well, I have plenty of gaming in my own life, so I don't. There's some people, and I feel bad for these people. They, based on whatever living conditions they have or restrictions of, I don't know, lifestyle, or maybe they live out in the sticks. There really is no gaming unless they go to a convention. I'm fortunate enough to have my friends over every other week, and then on Wednesday nights I do a virtual game, and sometimes in there I sneak in like an additional shorter game that I can run for some of my friends, and then also one of my kids. Currently, I only have 1 out of 5 kids that is interested in continuing to play D&D or role playing games. So I try to do like a once a month, like a 2-hour session for him. So I got a lot of gaming on my plate. I don't need like, extra stuff. I don't need to like, hey, you guys, we're meeting at the Waffle House. Don't be late. But it's fun, and it started off, I don't know, maybe as an ego thing that like, oh, I want to have my own convention. And, I want like most conventions, I start out small and then it gets bigger each year. That's kind of how I thought it would go as my own profile or standing or legacy in the hobby, slowly continues to rise. I mean, I don't know, maybe it does, maybe it's sinking. I keep putting out products that I am, for the most part, increasingly proud of. But sometimes it's ironic because sometimes I think the better thing that I've created, the smaller the audience. And that kind of goes against, I mean, it's kind of counterintuitive, but my stuff is so niche that it necessitates like the tiniest of audiences, I guess. And that's the good and the bad of it, I guess. But it is what it is. So I'm happy. I'm fine with it because like I said, I don't do this for the money. I don't do this for fame or whatever glory. It's my own sense of self satisfaction that kind of drives me. I do have like a built-in core audience, but really the audience I think of first and foremost is myself. Because otherwise I think the work would suffer, and I want the work to speak for itself. And I have to be the number one quality control person, because if not me, like who else? I mean, I could design for like other people because there's an audience for this thing, but and at certain points I've gone down that road, and I don't know, that's just not for me. I just want to do it because I love it, and because whatever I'm working on currently, I'm going to be using in the near future.
And that's what you're
and that kind of works best for me as both motivation and, like I said, the quality control. I can make sure that whatever I'm creating is up to my high standards because, it's for me. Why would I create it if I'm not going to use it, or if I think it's superfluous or it sucks or whatever?
So is that what you're playing in most of your games now? Is your stuff? You running a
Yeah. I use my own homebrewed OSR plus 5e, Advanced Crimson Dragon Slayer. Every once in a while, once or twice a year, maybe I'll do like a small update, because the game changes or mechanics go in and out as the campaign continues. We're in our 4th year. And before that, I ran hundreds of one-shots before focusing on campaign play again. Yeah.
So, what is the most recent thing you've got out right now? Because you got a pretty decent amount of stuff that you've published. Are you all entirely self-published?
Yeah.
Because
the very first thing
I tried on that. I feel your pain on that. I wanted this to be printed local. Like I had a local printer lined up and everything, and just could not get a Kickstarter big enough to fund actually printing it, doing all the layout. I mean, I did all the layout and stuff myself, but when it came to printing it and getting the shipping lined up and setting up distribution and all that, I just did not have a Kickstarter for it. So I ended up having to go to Lulu. And there is a definite, it's a fantastic book. It's really high quality, but it's not what I would have wanted to do publishing it myself. Not to mention I could have sold it for about $5 cheaper if I'd have published it myself.
Yeah. I'm not above like dropping down in quality from where I feel like I should be at. But for instance, with the first 3 books of the Chult trilogy, and who knows at this point if there's ever going to be a 4th, but I went like a high end, I had it printed professionally. It was all hardcover, and I got like, depending on which book, like 2,000 or 1,000 books, so I could like sign them, and they were all numbered, and like highest quality, very fancy. And then I realized that I couldn't keep doing that. I had to go drop down to like a soft cover print on demand in order to make the numbers work. And that's why I took 2 weeks, and I was just like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done self-publishing. I'm done with, wasn't done with a hobby. I was going to keep role playing.
Yeah.
But I was done as like, a self-publisher. I was done with Corthellis Publishing, and then I realized that, if I didn't let my ego get in the way, and I didn't drop down the quality of writing, I just dropped a little bit the quality of, I guess, the presentation.
Yep.
Then I could still make things work. I could make the numbers work. I could still put out a Kickstarter maybe once a year. I could raise $10,000, give or take, depending on the Kickstarter. And that would be enough to fund it, and that to pay for the layout, the artwork, a little bit for my time and energy, because I usually take like 6 months from start to finish. And, to enough money to like buy the books, then, and for shipping to send them out, because that all takes money. But yeah, I could make it work with the soft cover, the PODs, the print on demands. So I decided to do that and get away from the hardcovers. And I put out a number of them since that last book of the trilogy, since Chult Chartreuse Shadows. And so this latest one that I just finally got the books that I'm sending out to backers a couple days ago. And so this new book is Pulp Drenched Cities of Chult. And it started out as being like a city guide or gazetteer, kind of like Zach's Bornheim. Mm-hmm. Not a huge fan of Bornheim, but I liked it. I like it conceptually. I'm not really a big fan of Zach either, but whatever. And it just kind of morphed into a little bit of this, a little bit of that, some adventure stuff, a lot of city stuff, but a lot of things that are just like campaign specific for Chult. So yeah, a lot of random tables. It's a little bit of like everything, some stuff for game masters. So yeah, that's my latest book, and that turned out really good. And it's pretty long, 187 pages. It's got some really nice artwork. So yeah, I'm proud of it.
Yeah, and that's one of the important things is to put out work you're proud of. That's, that can actually, I almost think that ought to probably be one of the bonus tips that I've got for, or the bonus keys, is that I think it's in a lot of ways, it's harder to fail if you're putting out something that you're genuinely proud of. And I think the word genuinely is a real key there. There's a lot of people who lie to themselves and say they're proud about something.
Yeah.
But being able to look at it and kind of like inside the hollow part of your chest to understand, this is something I feel good about, whether it, sinks or floats.
Right.
I think that more often than that, that's at least going to flounder its way to shore.
And there's a timeline. Like I figure that the things that I was proud of, like say 18 months into my self-publishing journey, or the things I put out right away in the beginning, even before Cortala's publishing, like the thing that I wrote and I put out, I believe in 2004. It's a role-playing game called Venger Satanis, and at the time, I was proud of it. Now looking back, it's it's gotta be probably the worst thing I've ever written. But now, so many years into my journey, the things that I'm proud of now, I think I can objectively be proud of, whereas in the past, I might have genuinely been proud of something, but subjectively, it was maybe like a piece of shit. So, that doesn't mean that 10 years from now, I'm going to look back on the things I do now as a piece of shit. I hope. But there's the stumbling blocks when you first get started. And this is the theory that a lot of professional writers have, is that there's a lot of bad writing that you have to just kind of like get out. Hopefully you just put it in like a notebook, or you put it out and you complete the manuscript, and then you leave it on your hard drive, and you just leave it there, and you never show it because it sucks. And the next thing you make will be a little bit better, and the thing after that will be better still, God willing. And you just keep going from there.
It's kind of funny. It's jumping ahead a little bit, but the fourth of the design keys in my seven keys is design then refine. Literally saying it's the old writing advice of write the damn book.
Yeah,
write it. You can go back and fix it later, but if you don't write it, if you don't design the bad game and go back and see what you need to fix, you need to finish it so that it's not. I'm constantly, man, I've got my first chapter down pat. Like, congratulations, 10 years, you got a perfect first chapter. And then what you write in the second chapter, when you go from races to classes, now you need to go back and change your classes anyway, because what you did with your classes makes you have to change the thing you spent 10 years on. It's how you never finish a game. It's just make everything suck first and then go fix the suck.
Right. Yeah, that's also a good principle. I would give people, like, it seems like part of the audience for your channel is people either starting out or people that want to do this for themselves, or they're just interested in the process. Maybe they're interested in other creators and how they don't want to do it themselves, but they're interested in the process and they want to see other people and how they do it. But one piece of advice I guess I would give is give yourself a doable timetable and then stick to that timeline. Like, if you're doing like a full game or even like a full source book or something like that, I would give yourself no more than 6 months. See what you can do in 6 months. See what you have to complete whatever you do in like 6 months. If you're just doing like an adventure, maybe 2 months or something like that. Or if you're just something smaller, like let's say your goal is to write some sort of 10-page PDF on whatever kind of role-playing thing it is. Maybe it's like a few classes, or maybe it's, focuses on magic items or monsters or whatever. Maybe like give yourself 2 months and then complete it. And then, look back and see where do you need to revise, what could be made better, what could be integrated more cohesively to like the setting, like you were talking about before, over the system. But if you don't give yourself a timeline, and you just keep going and going, and you could spend years, as you said, like writing the first chapter, and then by the time you get to the second chapter, you have to revise the first chapter again anyway. So it's like you wasted all this time. Just like sit down and do it. If you're worried about not finishing, and that's a real concern that a lot of people have, just write the smallest goddamn thing you can, like one page, like a one-page adventure or a one-page game mechanic that you had in your head for a while. Just do that. Give yourself 1 week, one page. If you want to start out at the smallest part of this creating and self-publishing process, just do that. 1 week, one page. See if you can do it. If you can't do it, then there's some things in your life you're going to have to change. Maybe the goal of writing stuff and self-publishing it is what needs to change. I don't know. But hopefully you can succeed at that. And then you can use that confidence to go forward and maybe do like a 10-page PDF that takes you 2 months. And then, 100 or 200-page full role-playing game or whatever. And then give yourself like 6 months. That's what I would do.
Yeah, and that's very solid piece of advice. I mean, that's one of the things that I've mentioned doing when I started doing the 7 keys is you're not going to be able to. Every one of them flows from the personal discipline and professional discipline things you have to have, and you follow that directly back. Design then refine doesn't work if you don't have the basic professional discipline of setting a goal and accomplishing it, or setting a timeline and keeping it there. As they used to say, make your goals SMART, not vapid, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound versus, I can't even remember what vapid is now. It's a vague, amorphous, pie in the sky, irrelevant, and I forgot what the D means, but the D essentially means that it's not time bound at all, like it's diffuse. So basically, it's ill-defined, it's gigantic, it's a pie in the sky thing. It really doesn't have any it changes all the time. It's not really relevant to anything you're doing, and you can do, however long it takes is how long it takes. Like, I need to clean my entire house is not really a very good goal, but
no,
I am going to do 5 loads of laundry by 6 p.m. tonight is very attainable. It is very much a goal that can be accomplished.
Or at least my wife thinks it is.
Yeah, at least your wife thinks it is. That's right. Until the washing machine breaks. But
yes.
I do have to address this one real quick here. And this is, Old Sketch came in and said, he doesn't know what this is for, but have all of it. Oddly enough, I cannot see this at all on StreamYard. So I actually have to go click over to YouTube in order to see it. Apparently he sent me a 1,000 Joules goat trophy, which I think according to Shellback is like $5. So, hey man, appreciate it. Unfortunately, it doesn't show up as a super chat or anything. So if anybody sent me something I missed, sorry. Blame StreamYard for not bringing it over, but I certainly appreciate my golden goat trophy. I do like I will cherish it always. And of
Where's
course,
mine? I feel left out. That sounds pretty cool. I want one of those now.
Finishing touches on a halfling gardener class and send it off to Joe Block for approval this weekend.
Nice.
Halfling gardener. Don't get it twisted. WotC probably has halfling gardener somewhere in there as a class. A halfling gardener, but you can also do it with any race. You can be the humans can do it, the orcs can do it, everybody can do it.
Yeah.
And they can have the same stats too. So, stepping forward into the topic of tonight's conversation, big thing we're looking at here is thinking first in settings and then in systems. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not familiar with all of your work, just some of it, because I do have limited hours in the day. You are predominantly in the OSR field of game design, correct?
Yes.
Yep. So,
And then I would. So the difference for me between the OSR and say old school or traditional gaming is that with the Renaissance, I feel the need to take what was, and if I can, try to improve upon it. Not necessarily in like an objective way, like, oh, Advanced Crimson Dragon Slayer is better than AD&D, so that's just a fact. So, or whatever. But for my personal needs, what I'm looking for, me running the game at my table with my players, um, what I come up with is, yeah, usually more suited to my style. And so just for me personally, it's better or, more useful. And that kind of sometimes goes against what I would call a lot of the old school or traditional orthodoxy. I mean, we can get into that later or now if you want, but yeah, that's why I would definitely classify myself as OSR because of the whole Renaissance thing.
Well, I think that does kind of fold over into it because when people, I would think that when people think first in settings and then in systems, the question that would naturally come to mind for a lot of people watching that or hearing it would be along the lines of, well, if I'm using an existing system, I'm basically plug and play AD&D. I'm plug and play basic. I'm grabbing D20 or I'm grabbing the 5e base. Well, how can I really think in settings, and how can I think settings first when the system already exists and I'm trying to fit my setting on top of this system? Where does that play in to taking that existing framework and making it work systems settings first?
Well, I would say this might go even further than what you were thinking. Is when I sit down to play, I try to play in the setting rather than playing in the system. I know that at certain times, like swords are drawn, and characters and NPCs or monsters are shouting, and like it's time for initiative or combat or however you get that started, where game mechanics would then become involved. But outside of that, I try to just think in terms of setting and not system at all. And that's how I try to run the game. So not necessarily designing an adventure or coming up with a game mechanic or asking players like, do you want to play this game or that game? I try to see everything through the setting, especially when I sit down to play and to game master. And I think, I mean, that just suits the play style that I use, and I think that is an extremely valid approach. That I would guess not a lot of people do. I think the majority of game masters probably, as soon as they sit down, as soon as they start running the game, they think in terms of system. And I would encourage game masters to do the opposite and to think of in terms of setting and genre and maybe the tone or the theme of the game rather than the system. For me, because I'm a rules light guy, the system should always be like in the background. It should always take a backseat to the game that's happening right in front of you, which is the game master is describing things from a setting point of view, and the players, take that in and then make their decisions, and then of course the game master, adjudicates based on what those situations are or those decisions are, there's dice rolling, etc.
Yeah. So let's explore a little bit on that, because I think we're touching on exactly where we're heading there, because that is actually the genesis of that piece of advice. Is if you look at the 7 keys, a lot of them do have direct parallels to being a game master. I come from when it comes to D&D, I'm a 3.5 guy all day long. And a big part of the reason why I'm a 3.5 guy is because when I look at it, I see 3.5 as essentially a build your own game kit. It is here is just a ton of rules. Here's a ton of variants for all those rules. You need to go in and pick and choose the ones that best suit whatever campaign you're going to run, and essentially build your own Dungeons and Dragons to suit the type of fantasy game that you want to play, which gives it a tremendous amount of versatility. But like any toolbox, if you give a rank amateur, you point to a 350 small block and you point to a box full of every tool in the Snap-on catalog, this is how you end up with somebody who's got, who's taking an air hammer to the side of a head or something and is just totally screwing everything up. But when you look at Crimson Dragon Slayer, how does the setting of that game differ from, say, the classic idea of AD&D, maybe say Greyhawk, even though that's a bit of a stretch, but just the classic adventure fantasy of AD&D, and what changes did you make in your development of Crimson Dragon Slayer that corrects AD&D base from AD&D to your setting?
Okay. Yeah, good question. Well, I started running a lot of online games, and a lot of those had a short time span. And I would also play with a lot of random people. And so I needed something that was, to start with, my preferences, which is rules light. And then I needed something where I didn't have to constantly consult the rules. And also the players would be just fine not knowing the rules at all. I could explain it to them, like usually when someone bounces in from God knows where. I'm like, tell me the character concept you have in mind. And then maybe they'll say something like, well, I want to be kind of like Conan, but I also want my character to sort of be like the Beastmaster, something like that. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, so let's start with the category, like warrior. And then that comes with a few preset things. One of the things I jettisoned was ability scores. So there's no strength and intelligence, and then there's no rolling for that either. And that helped, because if you need to generate a character in 5 minutes because you're running a 90-minute online game, then what do? So I just kind of built in with the assumption that whatever class it is, so warrior, priest, sorcerer, thief, it's just assumed that you're automatically good at the things that a warrior or a thief would be good at. So that's already kind of baked in, and we don't have to worry about that. And I wanted stuff that was, it didn't have like a warrior has certain benefits, but they don't keep scaling with every level. Like at 7th level now, you have 7 different fighter things that sort of add on that everybody has to remember. I wanted the memory part of it to be scaled down to such a point where, oh, you're a 7th level warrior, okay, you get a +7 to attack and to damage. That's, besides the hit points, that's pretty much all of it. So therefore, we don't have to consult the book, and we don't have to think about what brand of fighter do you want to be, or, you know, all this other stuff. So I kind of designed the game around the parameters of what I had to work with and what my preferences were and what the limitations of, you know, the medium were. And if I'm just running like a 90-minute quick online game, or just playing like a beer and pretzels type, like Gonzo, whatever, for like 3 hours with my friends, you know, we can get in and out of there and create characters, or like just start playing immediately. And that was the attraction for me. And that I felt like that was a necessity. So I just kind of like made the rule set based on what I needed.
So essentially skinnying out, the idea is, in terms of how I define setting in the piece of advice, which it might not be a bad idea for me to go ahead and just do that for the folks here in chat, is that setting is not simply defined as, oh, it's Rokugan, or it's Greyhawk, or it's Forgotten Realms. Setting is a combination of the in-game, it's a combination of the genre and the game world. So it's, you know, D&D is, you know, AD&D is like adventure fantasy, pulp adventure fantasy, that sort of thing. Whereas modern Dungeons and Dragons is more high fantasy or high fantasy adventure, as opposed to, you know, because what is modern D&D about? Modern D&D is about epic fantasy. That's the word I was looking for. Epic heroic characters going to save the world from impending doom. And AD&D was about a group of guys who were veteran soldiers getting together to try and make their bones by diving into an old dungeon and trying to get out alive with the treasure, knowing full well that whatever monsters they found in there are probably going to kick their ass. So those are two completely different settings. Mm-hmm. Not in terms of what world they're in. They could both be Greyhawk, but right. In terms of this setting is regular average Joe trying to get treasure out of the ground. This setting is Superman trying to save the world from Lex Luthor. And mm-hmm. Even when you look at, you know, what is the setting in outside of the game, the meta setting, if you will, when you look at, say, Crimson Dragon Slayer, it's like, well, my meta setting is I am playing very quick, like 90-minute pickup games. These people have to come in, get their character ready, understand how the rules work, and play their game in 90 minutes. And it has to be fun and engaging. And the only way we can do that is by going in and taking out anything that is complicated or multifaceted and removing it. All right, this thing right here works with this over here, works with this over here. That all has to go away because we can't have A plus B plus C plus D. We need A to just do the job.
That's right. So, that's essentially it. That was half the design philosophy I used for Advanced Crimson Dragon Slayer, and the versions before that too. Yeah.
Which, by the way, this is the time to mention today's sponsor, the RPG Pundit. Nah, I'm not going to do that right there. I'm not going to talk. You said the word Gonzo fantasy, so I'm like, I'm going to come in here. This would be a great time for me to say that this Venger Satanis interview is brought to you by the Gonzo Fantasy Companion.
I mean, yeah, if the shoe fits. Pundit definitely has his, and yeah, if people have ever watched his videos, he definitely talks about his own stuff.
True, but no, this podcast is not for sale. We don't sell out. We don't shill. We don't try to get people to buy things on a regular basis. It's not about pushing products on Lulu for $14.99 or for $4.99 for the ebook at all. We're 100% here just for the spirit of the game and not to sell any products whatsoever. Sorry, my beard itched. Anyway, so that's really where we come into it with putting setting first. And one of the things I asked in the in the video, which went public for non-members at 5:00 yesterday. I'd asked some folks to comment and basically say, hey, what is a game, a recent game that really did this well or really did it poorly in terms of making sure that their mechanics really did play second fiddle to the setting. And I think last time I looked, we had a comment in there was talking about Mothership, saying that Mothership did it extremely well because everything is really good at keeping tension and everything works in making sure that that kind of dread follows it, which Chult is kind of in that same vein, isn't it? It's Chult is kind of, I don't know if I want to put it as like an Eldritch horror type thing. It's more of a would you say slaughterhouse is probably a good way to say it?
I mean, people could run it that way. So Chult has its own what I call aesthetic keys, and there's 8 of them. Started out with 4, and then I kind of doubled it over time. And this goes to exactly what you were saying with setting, that it's not just like the place and the genre. Like, what else goes into making, for instance, your Greyhawk or his Chult like their own special thing. So Chult for me is Eldritch, Gonzo, science fantasy, post-apocalypse, humor, sleaze, pop culture, and grindhouse exploitation. And those are kind of all the elements that make Chult what it is. And so I know if I'm hitting some of those, each little bit, each encounter or each scene, then I'm doing it right. Then I'm presenting Chult the way it should be. And and that's obviously important to me as the game master. Because otherwise, aesthetically, you just kind of drift to whatever, maybe your default or the least common denominator. So it's important for a lot of reasons for me to have like specific aesthetic keys and to adhere to them. I don't know if the players would mind or care that much if it kind of over the course of a campaign kind of drifted into standard D&D or Greyhawk or something like that. But I want to keep a fair amount of, I guess, fidelity might be the right word. I just want Chult to be, Chult, and so that's why I stick to those 8 things. I forgot the question. Maybe I already answered it. I don't know.
I was just saying that we're looking at Chult as a setting, both in the meta and the in-game sense. We're looking at it as, and I'm just saying it's like, hey, it's kind of a grindhouse, slaughterhouse style, but you of course like kind of a sleaze. Almost
there's actually not a lot of player like PC, not player, but PC death. So in that way, when you say slaughterhouse, it's not really. It can be gritty, and sometimes it can be hard or or tough or whatever. But I also try to keep it fairly light. And the only total party kill, TPK, that we had is right after a fuchsia butterfly came down and sort of, in a way, pollinated or maybe sort of scanned or took in the genetic information of the player characters. So then later, when they all died, which they ended up doing, not last year, but I think the year before. So I think this is year 2. They would respawn as like, a cactus would grow and then they would be like fruit off this cactus, and then they would like sort of break out of their pods or like a chrysalis, like kind of like a butterfly or caterpillar or whatever, and then they would like reform and be themselves again, or rather they'd be sort of clones of themselves, because then they could go back to the cave-in where they set off a photon torpedo underground. The entire place was demolished. You know, they didn't realize the enormity of the explosion, which had killed them all. So their bodies were still down there, but you know, their new clone bodies could, you know, if they wanted to, could go back and like loot their corpses or whatever to get their stuff back.
Yeah, which I know.
I'm going
I
to
use
plug in my phone real quick so it doesn't die on you. Or die on me, rather. There we go.
I was thinking, and I think I may be actually using the incorrect term there too when I'm saying slaughterhouse. I'm thinking of what I'm really thinking of is like horror comedy movies. So, like for instance, Ready or Not. I don't know if you've seen that one yet, but it's basically just an over the top, stupid horror, like way over the top, people like full on exploding, gory horror movie that's just like, but is intentionally stupid, intentionally plays off of and mocks a lot of the horror tropes. Like the people hunting the main character are all wildly incompetent and stupid. Like they're that kind of thing, which very, you know,
there's some of that. I like to keep the players on their toes. So sometimes there'll be that, and then sometimes it'll be something that's, you know, where the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. And sometimes it's really driven by player goals and just they want to do something, and then they go do it. I try to facilitate that the best I can based on the world and you know, relevant information, circumstances. So what they encounter is going to be just as much kitchen sink as Chult itself, since Chult is kind of like a multi-genre type setting. So you never know exactly what you're going to get. It's always a surprise. So it's a surprise for them, and it's a surprise for me. You know, I'll have things that I've prepared, and I know kind of what generally will be coming down the pike. But there's always so many surprises along the way that it's the furthest thing from being scripted, or having some sort of predetermined outcome that you can find. Even though I am also a big proponent of story and narrative and what I would call the living story.
I'm saying the narrative is a driving force in the game. I do have to acknowledge this real quick. My biggest fan, Crapbone here, who was not going to watch until he saw that you were on. He is the greatest advertiser for this channel right there. He gives out great things like I certainly would not be watching Daniel's channel if you weren't here. And then of course he told you it's the butterfly effect on steroids. I don't think that's quite the butterfly effect, except for in a very literal sense, but kind of works there.
The fuchsia butterfly, yeah. It is. It's a different kind of butterfly effect. Yeah,
no doubt. So when you were putting Chult together, what adjustments did you make to the system to promote that, like you said, that kitchen sink mentality, to make sure that it did work, at least in a quirky fashion, for just whatever kind of serious or stupid stuff you wanted to throw in?
So for the RPG part, okay. Well, I think just leaving space for whatever the game master kind of wants to do with it is important. If you over design. I think sometimes that can be just as bad as like under designing. If you want, I mean, also depending on the play style. I never go full like story game with my stuff, but every once in a while, I do love it when the players can participate in basically generating content for the campaign setting or the session. Like I said, it doesn't happen all the time, but maybe once or twice a session, I will have a player tell me, or I'll ask them, like, this guy is just for instance, this guy is like smoking something, and it's the smoke that's giving off is like weird colors, and he's got this glazed kind of stoner look in his eye. What kind of drug is he on? So yeah, I'll throw that to a player, and then they'll come up with whatever they do. Sometimes they'll come up with something right off the bat. Sometimes they'll think about it for a few seconds. Sometimes they'll suggest something, or they'll describe something, and then that kind of throws it back to me, maybe, or another player, and they contribute. And then we kind of come up with something together as a group, and then we just go on with that, like as if, and then that's kind of now canon for at least that scene, which means that exists here and probably elsewhere in the campaign setting in the world. And I like to do that stuff like that, and sometimes if I do that a few times and that works out good, I like that. Sometimes I will create a game mechanic around that type of thing, and if I like that enough and the other players are good with that, then maybe I'll drop that into like the core rules with like the next update. So things like that.
And you have a lot of
the magic system is like another place where if you're designing for a certain type of campaign, you should be able to tweak the magic system so it can become, more gonzo or more pulp or more gritty or more realistic or more epic fantasy or whatever. Since magic is something that's not based in the real world, like we conceive of it with, like, shooting fireballs out of your hands, things like that. I always think that magic is a good way to calibrate the setting to the system.
Okay. Which actually I want to put a pin in that right now, because I do want to expand on that. Because that's an interesting concept to say, use the magic to calibrate the system, the setting to the system. And to use some big fancy words for it, it sounds like we've got codified co-creation, as well as tonal adjustability added into here, to make Chult work.
Those are a whole lot of 50-cent words, but yes,
they were. Those are not 50-cent words, my friend. Those are dollar words. So
I mean, it depends on your rate of inflation, I guess.
depends on what part of the country.
Consult your local economy.
In California, those are $20 words.
Yes.
I think that's why Pundit uses so many really big words, is because he's in Uruguay, and it's like if he really wants to make it, if he wants to get enough, he has to have the big dollar amount words, because those 20 Uruguay dollars are like $1 over here. But
yep.
But no,
the rate of exchange.
That's right. So you take your co-creation. Co-creation is codified into the game. It's built into the rule structure. And there you go. Mikey D coming in with their $20 words before tax.
Before tax, that's right.
So when we look into that, you say, hey, I want to have, and not going into the full blown 4D, everybody stays in character for 500 years and magically produces pins on tables. But taking into that, like I said, a sort of rule based co creation, do you have a mechanic put into it, or is it simply, hey, here's a suggestion for you as a GM. I'm leaving this open to you to do this or not do this? Or is it actually suggested in as a mechanic where it's like, hey, when you introduce something, there's like a 2-1 rule. You give 2 pieces of information, you ask your player for another and incorporate that back into it. Is that something that's actually, well, codified into the rules? And then
I'd say all the above.
To bounce off of that, same question, only instead of looking at codified co-creation or, having rules to develop more player interaction, player creation in the world, what mechanics have been added or tweaked or created specifically to give a less experienced or less imaginative GM the tools they need to give them that ability to direct their focus to pulp or grindhouse or whatever else they want to do, epic fantasy or grimdark or whatever.
Oh, okay. As a game master, I think you have to have a certain amount of authorial intention. As an author, you're not scripting everything. You're not telling the players, how to run their characters, but you should know generally how things go in that world. I think one of the best things a game master can have going for him is being attuned to the campaign setting that he's running. Because if you have that, then it's so much easier to improvise and go with the flow, which is, obviously very important. If you're well attuned to the setting, then you don't necessarily even need an adventure or really any notes in front of you. You can kind of wing it. I would tell game masters not to make a habit of like winging the majority of their sessions in a campaign, because shit happens. Sometimes you hit a wall or you get a little bit creatively blocked. But even when you do, just remember that you are one of the players in a game, and the players also exist, and they're right there playing the game with you. And really, you don't need a game mechanic. Really, all it takes is for you to put down that imaginary GM screen, that wall that says that all of the creation has to come from you, and the players can't really do anything except talk about their characters. Players, if you just realize that wall doesn't even really exist, and you can just ask a player, like, let's say you're just coming up with, out of necessity, you're just blanking on an NPC's name. You invented an NPC because of whatever circumstances. You don't have a name for them, and for whatever reason, you're just fresh out of ideas. Coming up with names for characters is kind of like one of my few gifts, so I don't have a problem with that. But let's say you do, and you're the type of game master that will just default to like Bob or something like that. Just ask the player. It doesn't have to be a specific player. It could be it could be the entire table. You just open it up to the entire table. You're like, what's this NPC's name? Or like, what's this elf with a limp? and maybe a lisp. Like, what's this character's name? The players aren't just going to like stare at you blankly, like does not compute. Like game master has to do everything. The players are going to act like human beings, and they'll be like, "Oh, I don't know, Jed." It doesn't have to be like a good suggestion in the beginning, at least. It just has to be a suggestion at all. Any kind of contribution at that stage, especially that early stage, when you're not used to doing something like that, anything can be good or valuable or useful. And then once you've done that, you've like Obi-Wan and Luke, you've just crossed the threshold into like a whole new world. And again, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and like, I don't have an adventure prepared. Like, you players tell me like everything that happens. You don't want to go crazy, but you can just little things here and there, like if the players go into the PCs go into a tavern and they're like, well, what do they have on tap? You're like, well, they have mead and ale and I don't know, what's something else that they might have? And then maybe a player, someone that's played in one of my games, and it's like, maybe they have worm wine. Like, okay, boom. They have mead and ale and worm wine on tap. And then, you don't have to make a giant deal about it. You can just move on. And now the game just continues. And I don't think that's, for me, that doesn't break immersion.
No.
It kind of like helps facilitate the believability in this world, because we're creating things and then you come up with something and then that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Anytime you have the players, though, I am a little bit of a hypocrite on that, because I am like the king of the elf walks into the tavern, in some small podunk one horse village in my D&D game. It's like, I'm going to go up and I'm going to order like fireberry wine. And I'm like, the bartender looks at you and goes, I have ale. Well, what kind of
that's good. That's good too. There's nothing wrong with that.
it's like, dude, it's like this guy has 3 stools in his bar and none of them match. It's like, what makes you think he's got anything other than what's in that barrel over there?
Right. And that's the fun part, because you're battling this tension between realism based on, not that, there's a certain amount of realism where, like a one horse town tavern
like
won't have like weird exotic stuff available. That's just kind of common sense. But at the other end of the spectrum, especially if it's like a larger town, city, community, sometimes there, you get the blue sky in front of you. There's really no necessarily right or wrong answer. Your imagination is the limit. You can kind of do whatever. And sometimes it's fun to play against realism. Like, let's say you're in a one horse town, you go into a tavern and they do have that weird fireball cocktail or whatever. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, that if you like humor in your game, that can be part of the humor, part of the joke. Comedies are based on
he's got a magic
reality, like not working.
Yeah, like I say, he's got a line out the door. People coming from all around to go to his tavern. Why? Because he's got a magic barrel that dips whatever he wants out of it.
There you go. Perfect.
Then it turns out to be a portal to the underworld, and that's where your adventure starts with when demons start jumping out of his ale barrel.
That's great. That's better than like 50% of the the hooks that game masters have spent like 2 hours like refining like how to start the session or the campaign or something like that. And you just came up with that, and that's like, that's better than half of the stuff that the game master's hunched over and he's got like a wastebasket full of like crumpled up paper of like terrible ideas. And so sometimes that's the beauty of it, role playing games. Sometimes you can spend 3 hours and come up with like a ho hum idea, and sometimes and I could come up with, I've spent like 6 years developing Chult, and with all my accumulated knowledge and wisdom and time spent, I'll come up with something, and maybe it'll be, decent, not great, just decent. And then some player, maybe this is their first session ever, first time ever experiencing Chult, will come up with something off the top of their head. I'm like, that is miles ahead better than anything that I currently had in my brain. So yeah, we're going with what you said.
Yeah, we're doing that.
We're doing that.
We got to go here. Got to acknowledge puns when they come up. Shellback. There you go. The master carpenter in the swamp village making his stuff bog standard, which is that is absolutely there for me. And since you touched on this, I thought of it, and he touched on this. Shellback, came back with, my buddy has a rule called I know a guy. Han Solo used it in episode 5 when he called up Lando. Player doesn't know how the contact will react to the call, but they know a guy. And then I was sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, you got Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? And I'm convinced somewhere in the back of my head that the reason that Obi-Wan Kenobi, when Luke Skywalker is like, old Ben Kenobi, and it's like, this is what happens when a GM makes up some stupid ass name that nobody can remember, and then the next thing you know, they're just old Ben Kenobi the entire time.
Yeah.
But there you go.
And then you can pull a fast one and be like, 2 sessions down the line, he finds the remnants of this Jedi Council that he didn't even know still existed, and they're like, "Oh, Obi-Wan, blah blah blah," and they're like, "Oh shit." So he is called Obi-Wan, and then you can bring that, that difference there, that dichotomy. Whereas, he goes by Old Ben, but to his special Jedi friends, they know him as Obi-Wan, and
everybody else just calls him Ben because they can't be bothered to pronounce the rest of it. I don't know. That's what I think. I think Luke Skywalker's player just couldn't keep Obi-Wan in his head, so he just kept calling him Old Ben for the entire time.
Yeah. But and that makes sense too. That also is a part of the realism, because that happens. Like, you come up with some fancy name, and then based on other people hearing about it, after years and years, Obi-Wan Kenobi turns to Old Ben Kenobi.
Yeah,
that's a normal, realistic part of life. That if you can incorporate that into the game, for me, that's 1,000 times more immersive than putting up this creative wall where what's in the world is just in the world, and the players, through game mechanics or player contributions creatively, can never like touch the, I don't know, pristine, authentic naturalness of the world you created. Like, I don't know. For me, that's not a priority at all. So I have no problem like, asking for suggestions, or if the players and their characters are like carousing. One time when we were playing Chult, I didn't want to get into a whole like extended scene of the carousing. So I told them, give me one thing that your character did or saw or experienced or whatever, while they were at the cantina. last night. And then, you know, we go around the table and they tell me, and sometimes that will provoke a reaction from another player, and they'll make a comment, and then sometimes that's just funny, or sometimes that will build on something that someone else said, and maybe that will spark an idea in me of like, oh, that actually relates to, if you remember the earlier part of the session when they were doing this, and they're like, oh yeah. And then, you know, the next player talks about whatever his character did, and then maybe he again builds off something a prior character said, or maybe he'll come up with his own thing. And then when we're all done, then you're like, oh, okay. And then, you know, that all happened, and now you're just, it's the next day, and you're waking up from your hangover or whatever, and you know, and then boom, here's the next thing that happens. You know, someone NPC knocks on the door, and you know, then we're off to whatever the next thing is.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to look at it this way too, there's a couple of key parts there, where when you're talking about players being more invested in your world, the more they're invested, the more fun they're going to have, the less likely they're going to have to blow stuff up in the first place. But to use a fishing analogy, you know, the best baited hook is nowhere near as good as a trap. So if the player creates the quote unquote character hook themselves by bringing some character into the world or something, that's a trap. That is a character hook that they've already swallowed it. They don't have to take the hook. They don't have to take the bait because they created it themselves. And they've just taken a massive load off of the GM's shoulders when it comes to, you may have like a site-based adventure, for instance, already kind of planned out that's going to be really cool. And if they come up with their own reason why they need to go there and don't even know where there is yet, I mean, that's 100,000 times better than you having to lead them along.
Yeah.
Without any question whatsoever. So I mean, I'm definitely a big advocate of that. And then it's kind of fun when you say it, kind of funny when you say it, talking about, you know, not having like a iron grip on the fidelity of the world. I always tell people, I'm like, the game master is a player and his character is the world. So he has, his player agency is over the world. A player's player agency, of course, is over their character. However, anything that a player brings up is their character's perception of how things work. It's how they remember it. Now, you may say in your backstory that you have a brother. I may turn around and say he's not actually your brother. He was adopted and he's part of the story or something, but you grew up with him as a brother. Or my sister was kidnapped by bandits and I'm on a mission to go find her. Well, no, your sister wasn't kidnapped by bandits. Your sister brought the bandits to town and left with them because she's actually a bandit leader now. Like she started the whole thing. But the same thing kind of plays true on the other side as well. You can't play with the character's perception of the world. And if you allow them to tell you how their character perceives the world, then you can very easily decide, well, you know what? That wasn't what I had in mind, but I think your perception just became reality. And that integrates that, it kind of gives you a mesh of player agency from the characters and the game master, instead of keeping them with that Chinese wall that separates game master and player agency all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna give you a 2-minute warning because I gotta go in like 2 minutes. But so I don't know if anybody has like a question in the chat, or if you have one more thing you want to talk about. But
let's pull it up here.
Okay.
I will throw it to who we've got left in chat here. If anybody's got a question for Venger, throw it in the chat now. We'll go ahead and pull that up. Which is probably good because I probably need to go early a little bit myself too and see how the wife's doing. But yeah, if you got anything from Venger, throw it in there. But it's kind of funny because it went into the more game master side of things, but I think that's very key. You cannot be a good game designer if you are not a good GM. I don't think it's possible. If you are not capable of running a game on that level and putting those principles into practice, I don't see how you can design around them, because how can you visualize something that you don't experience or have any familiarity with?
Yeah. That would be challenging. Yeah, I think a good game designer has to have a firm grasp of what game mastering is about. Otherwise, yeah, they're not gonna be able to zig and zag like they need to. I don't know. There's always exceptions to the rule, so there's probably people that can do it. I don't know, but yeah, it seems like you'd have to be a good game master to be a good game designer. But
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't have any
that's
statistics in front of me, so but that just seems like a reasonable expectation. Yeah.
And I think that's true too. I mean, we have to talk not necessarily in generalities, but at least in plural, at least in majorities here, that yeah, there's exceptions to every rule on the planet. There's some guy out there who broke every single one of these like 7 keys to game design. Broke even the basic things, has no personal discipline or anything, throws out a game and it's fantastic and it's amazing and everything hits because he's some kind of weird savant. But that doesn't work that doesn't work. It's like day trading in crypto bros. It's like, yes, there's a crypto bro out there who made himself a multimillionaire overnight with crypto. And there's 500 million of him that went dead broke because they tried to do the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, let's follow the rule of, that one guy who timed the market does not make up for the whole timing the market doesn't beat time in the market, to throw some finance out there. But it doesn't look like we have any questions here. I'm just going to go ahead and sum up the poll here. But right before I do that, I'm going to go thank you for coming out, and I'm going to let you go take care of what you need to take care of. And
thank you.
I'll close up here. But I do appreciate you coming out and sharing some pearls of wisdom with us. And look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. And yes, to all your watchers out there, your audience, thank you for listening. And comment, like, share.
Yeah, there you go.
Good things
I had to ask about.
Yeah. If anybody wants to visit my blog, you just Google Venger's Old School Gaming Blog. And if anybody is not doing anything next weekend and you live anywhere near Wisconsin, I would highly encourage you to check out VengerCon 5, The Will to Power, because it may in fact be the last VengerCon in the entire universe ever. You never know. So
I think Shellback already bought his tickets from Japan. He's flying over.
Sweet.
You heard it, guys. Shellback is flying over from Japan to go to VengerCon, so all y'all can get off your butts and drive up there.
That's right.
So anyway, but yes, and I forgot to ask for him anyway because I'm a bad host. Throw me your links when you get a chance. Just shoot them to me in DM. I'll make sure that they get added to the added into the pinned comment and description for this when it turns into a video, to make sure that they can find all of your wonderful stuff as well as your blog. And I hope you do have a line out the door at VengerCon. But I will see you next time, Mr. Venger.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. See you.
All right there, guys. Like I said, a great show going on there. Great guest. And I hope everybody got something out of it. On our poll, should I give the minis away painted? It does look like the overwhelming majority, 67%, say that no, I should not give them away painted. I should give them away and make you people paint them yourself. Maybe I'll have like a couple of ones that I paint, and you can have, for your own shelf, you can have my own crappy paint job should you request it. Maybe I'll do a paint on request thing, but I'm working on those. I'll make sure that everybody knows more about them when they come up. Mr. Kennedy, appreciate you stopping by, my friend. But, folks, we're going to call it an early lid, about a half hour early. I hope every last one of you has a wonderful weekend and a wonderful a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week. And don't forget, Friday, members already have this, but I've got a reaction to Seth Skorkowski that will be dropping on Friday. That video is going to be pretty fantastic. Spoiler alert, some of the stuff that Venger and I spoke about here on the show oddly lines up with some of the things that I reacted to from Mr. Seth. So you guys have a good one. I'll see you next time.